Happy Saturday to everybody. Thanks for clicking on to the tropical outlook for the date. What date is it? The 17th of August. A little bit confused, skipping time zones, 24 hours late getting home, etc., etc. But yes, back at Vogan Weather HQ, and I have to say it is wonderful to have the home comforts once again. But thanks for your patience. Obviously, yesterday's video was pre-recorded from 2 days beforehand, and therefore, obviously, the welcome to Thursday's edition of the European Outlook was in fact for Saturday. There was a little bit of when that was recorded, we thought we were flying back on the Wednesday, but it turned out to be that the flight, as you know, if you watched yesterday's video, was cancelled. We were then sent back into a hotel once again, and we did it all over again for another 24 hours. So I did do a video, recorded it, and then uploaded it on Thursday. The video that was meant to be was eventually Saturday. So just in case there was a little bit of confusion, are you home? What day is which? We should be back to normal resumption as of today. Also, there will be a live stream tomorrow at the traditional time of 4 p.m. I'm hoping to have a link in the description below today's video for that, so you can mark that down. And join me if you can. It would be wonderful to see you. Drop a comment. I'll answer some questions. Obviously, this is a tropical outlook, but I wanted to make mention yesterday was the 20th anniversary of the Boscastle flood disaster down in Cornwall. I will try and do a little piece on that in the live stream tomorrow, showing a couple of facts and some imagery, etc., of that disaster that took place in the Boscastle area of Cornwall back in 2004. So the 20th anniversary obviously was yesterday, but everything's kind of been knocked out due to travelling and delays and whatnot. But home safe and well. It's good to be home. It's good to be back. Had a good 12 hours kept there, so it's feeling relatively fresh after the travel of the last day or two. So, Ernesto, 85-mile-per-hour hurricane made landfall on the western side of the island of Bermuda. It's the first landfalling hurricane since 2020, so we're talking around 4 years since the last time Bermuda has been hit directly by a hurricane. Obviously, a lot of glancing blows within the western position, within the western portion of the Atlantic basin, but this region is very well accustomed to hurricanes. You've got the structures that are built sufficiently to deal with hurricanes, and obviously it was nowhere near as bad as the recent benchmark of 2003 with Fabian. That caused a lot of damage, and in fact, I don't think there's been any deaths reported on the island of Bermuda due to a hurricane landfall or sideswipe in the last 20 years. I think you have to go all the way back to Fabian of 2003, which obviously is 21 years ago, the last time there was actually a death reported on Bermuda, which is quite interesting. But you can see here, rather ragged looking, a lot of the convection is displaced to the north, if you notice here. The system was stronger. It was a Category 2 before it made landfall. Literally within the last hour and a half, may I add, it's literally just moving away from the island just now. Another interesting aspect about the Ernesto is the fact that it's been a relatively slow mover. Usually once it gets to this latitude, and if you kind of draw a line, you're generally talking about the mid-Atlantic region of the United States. That's essentially where Bermuda is positioned. If we actually look at the National Hurricane Center chart here, well, generally the Carolinas, I suppose, is where it's positioned. But generally it's frequently sideswiped by hurricanes, but you have to go back 4 years the last time there was a landfall of a hurricane or tropical cyclone to... so yeah. Anyway, 85 miles per hour, 974 millibars. Pressure at landfall was 972 millibars. It's moving rather slow in a north-northeasterly direction at 9 miles per hour. And you can see, like I say, quite a lot of convection generally displaced to the north. It makes me think anyway that there is south-westerly shear going on here. The system has become less organized. If we look at the expected tracks, this is off Tropical Tidbits. This is the GFS ensemble. You can see here that the system stays to the east of Nova Scotia, and it looks as if it may clip the Avalon Peninsula of Newfoundland as a post-tropical storm sometime within the next 2 to 3 days here, and then move eastwards towards the UK. Now, notice here that there is a little bit of disagreement here. Quite a few members of the GFS actually takes it to the south. Some take it to the north, and you've got a congregation of tracks here that takes it towards the central and southern west coast of Ireland here. This would be late next week, as already discussed. You can see here, this is off the multi-model hurricane models, and you can see the general consensus is very, very good overall. It's staying well to the east of Nova Scotia and clipping, either just passing or just clipping the Avalon Peninsula of Newfoundland as a post-tropical system. Looks as if it's going to weaken further heading north. It may kind of briefly re-strengthen, but generally I think it's going to stay as a Category 1 system. Doesn't look as if it's going to strengthen any further, much further anyway. So this is the official track of the National Hurricane Centre, as you can see here. Interesting tweet here by National Hurricane Centre showing Ernesto made landfall on Bermuda, 4:30 a.m. AST. Strong winds, dangerous storm surge, and life-threatening flooding expected to continue for the island here. Let me see if there's any other interesting factors to show you here. This was a capture here back on the 15th. Lightning flashes are within Hurricane Ernesto, so you can see a lot of the lightning activity. Quite an incredible imagery here. This was when the system was a lot stronger, by the way. I think it did become a Cat 3. I'm not entirely sure because I've been traveling the last day or so here, so I'm a little bit not 100% sure. But look at the effects it's had, by the way, along the Outer Banks of North Carolina. So even though this system has been primarily affecting Bermuda, it's not been, the East Coast hasn't been completely void of any side effects here. So there's a home here, a beach home, getting swept out into the Atlantic. So obviously up and down the East Coast, we've had wave action, we've had an increase in rip current threat, and this has been the scene on the Outer Banks of North Carolina due to the passage of Ernesto. So quite incredible stuff, actually, when you think about that. Let me just see here if there's been anything else. I'm a little bit cautious about showing stuff like this here, because this stuff here by Josh Morgan, a storm chaser here, it's not for broadcast, so I don't necessarily want to click into this. I'm a little bit cautious about doing that because I don't have permission essentially to show you this, but this is essentially within the eye wall of Ernesto, as you can see here. So the kind of typical effects of a Category 1 hurricane, and the good news is that this is a region well used to systems. This is another interesting fact here about Ernesto, is the fact that it's 900 miles wide and about 3 times the average hurricane size. But size and strength do not equal strength. It is a Cat 1 headed towards Bermuda. 4 to 8 feet of wave action will hit the mid-Atlantic coast this weekend, and the high rip current risk will continue. So I've obviously discussed the rip current situation with regards to Ernesto. I think I've kind of covered more or less everything. Let's have a look and see what some of the models are showing here. Let's actually have a quick look at the sea surface temperatures here real quick and see what they're showing. So the Western Atlantic, and this is the SSTs currently. So generally around the island of Bermuda, we are talking about 27, 28 Celsius. There's Bermuda right there. Actually, you can see it on the chart. So water temperatures generally conducive for supporting hurricanes, as you would expect at this time of the year anyway. But the really hot stuff, if you notice here, is through the Caribbean, and particularly so around the Gulf of Mexico. So some of these sea surface temperatures, by the way, are right up there with some of the hottest you'll ever see in the Gulf of Mexico. And this is the concern later down the road here as we start to see more systems coming off Africa. If we can get anything through the Caribbean and particularly into the Gulf of Mexico, you have ample fuel to get tapped here. A lack of tropical activity really so far during this season means that these sea surface temperatures have been able to continue rising, and they've been at record levels for months on end now, and it looks as if we are talking about 32, possibly even 33 or 34 Celsius around the south coast of Louisiana here. This is a real concern if we can get a system in to the Gulf of Mexico down the road here. This is exceptionally warm sea surface temperatures to speak about. Looking at the anomaly here, and you can see the anomaly showing up here. Very, very significant warmth, especially up across the north central Gulf of Mexico here. Some of these anomalies are really pretty remarkable stuff. So let me see here what else we can quickly show you, because we're actually about to see the in-laws and catch up a little bit since we've been away. So I'm going to try and cut this reasonably quick today. So you can see here, let's look at the GFS, the latest run. So there's Ernesto right there. Let's go to the North Atlantic view actually. See what it's showing here. So the mean ridge, the core, is centered over the eastern side of the North Atlantic. There's Ernesto. Not a lot of strong high pressure around the western side of the Atlantic basin, hence why the system is moving north over this region of the Atlantic. Latest run of the GFS, like all the other model runs, sending it to the east of Nova Scotia, generally staying offshore of Newfoundland if you notice, and then it looks as if it kind of becomes dissipated and probably absorbed into a larger circulation towards the UK and Ireland here. So Ernesto is out of the way. Then if we continue to play through the loop here, see another wave coming off Africa here. But generally speaking, there is not a whole lot to speak about in terms of development here. At the very end of the loop here, you can see some sort of feature developing in the western side of the Gulf of Mexico. This is away to Saturday the 31st, long way off. But the MJO, as I've already made mention of, is becoming less favourable for the Atlantic basin. And if you notice here that we do have increased convection over the Indian Ocean and the other side of the world, moving towards the mid and late, well, more or less primarily the late half of August, given the fact that we're already on the 17th. But if you notice here in the upper 200 millibar CHI anomalies, there is convection over the East Atlantic. West Atlantic basin is less so, and then as we move towards the latter half of August, you're really increasing the subsidence over the Americas and the Atlantic basin. So therefore, I would expect to see a downturn in the tropics and the Atlantic towards the end of the month, and then I think we're going to ramp things back up again during the month of September. So that's it for today. Like, share, and subscribe. I do greatly appreciate that. And join me at 4 p.m. for the live stream tomorrow. I hope to have a link in the description below today's video for that. Bye for now.